Great. I think, or hopefully everyone had a good weekend and is ready to start really learning some Java. So today, I guess I'll start off with some announcements. We have TAs, so that is very exciting. Down on the syllabus page, where is it? In the Labs and Course Assistance section, you can see I have updated the description with the names of the TAs for the different sections. So your TA will be the person that grades your work, so it's important that you get to know them. Again, you don't have to go physically to your lab, but it's a good idea because you can just get your lab graded right there and you'll know that you got everything right. But you can also turn in your labs on D2L until 6 a.m. on Friday mornings. Yes, your TAs have access to D2L now, and you can also contact them on Discord. They all have the course assistant role on Discord, and I think most of them have TA after their name, so you should be able to find them. But if you can't remember your TA's name, you can find it here. Any questions about TAs and labs? At the end of class today, we will go over Lab 1, which will be similar to most of our labs. So we had Lab 0, which was just not any coding, but we'll actually get into our coding labs, and we'll see that at the end of class today. Another announcement is that the first project is now up on the website. We haven't learned everything that you need for this project, but if you want to get ahead, take a look at that, see what you can do already. You're welcome to take a look at it. The only thing that I will say right now is that I am going to allow projects to be done with a partner. So if you really enjoy working with another person and you want to turn in a single file together, you can do that for projects only, but I haven't written down the details yet, so that information will be coming. But if you want to take a look at the first project, you're welcome to do that. Cool. So, starting into today, I first wanted to look back at what we didn't get to from Friday. So, we weren't able to go through comparing this Python program that computes a temperature in Celsius from a temperature in Fahrenheit, but the code is up on that lecture page. So you would just be on the syllabus, you would go to that lecture page, and you can try, you could try to write this program in Java, or you can also take a look at this file here, and that first part where we convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius is done for you, so you can try to make sure that you can follow that. And then there's also a little task that you can kind of test your understanding by trying to do that outside of class. So that's available to you there. And then another thing, just comparing Python and Java that I wanted to point out that I didn't get to on Friday is one difference between Python and Java is that Java is compiled. So that means that we write our Java code, in our human-readable Java, and then it is compiled into bytecode that is then run by the computer. And so you might remember from 127, I still have my idle shell here. So that with Python, I could actually just run, test out commands in the interpreter here. I could say 1 + 1 and just press enter, and now I have my answer to that. This code executes in the interpreter. With Java, one sort of step that we can take to start to understand, what's going on behind the scenes of my IDE. So I've opened up Eclipse, and I have my project here, and I guess if I want to know, okay, let's see. Let's look back at day 2. We were looking at this data types file, right? And I can see this, nice, this lovely program here. And I can run it in Eclipse, and that's great. But where is this on my computer? Like, what's actually happening? So one thing is that, well, this file does exist on my computer. And one way that I would go about trying to understand where is this is I just right-clicked and I went down to the properties for this file, and I can see where this is located. You might not be able to see it because it's very small, but this is located in my Eclipse workspace in what I called my project, which was CSCI 132. So on my Mac, if I go to my Finder, where is this? And if you want to do this for yourself, I can help you since it's probably pretty small. But maybe you can see it on the video after class also. But I have something in my home directory. I have an Eclipse workspace directory. And then in that, I have for this project, because I called it CSCI 132, I have 2 folders. One is called SRC, which holds the source code. That holds our Java source code. And one is called bin for binary files. And what happens, so let's just take a look. We were just looking at day 2 data types. There it is. And datatypes.java. So, I opened this in Eclipse. And I can look at it in Eclipse. But this is just a file on my computer. I'm going to open this with TextEdit, because that's a program on Mac that can open text. And that's exactly this file. If I were to make a change in Eclipse, I would change this file. So that's my Java source code. But when this is compiled, it creates another file. And that lives in this folder here. And here it's called datatypes.class. And if I were to try to look at this, see, my Mac doesn't even want to let me open it because it says, this is not for you, this is for computers. But I might be able to open it if I actually select TextEdit here. TextEdit, yes. Okay, and so we can see here, if I make this a little bit bigger, that this is not the same Java code that I wrote before, right? So this is that compiled file. So we will be writing our Java programs. They get compiled. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you as another difference between Python and Java. And we may touch more on this later in the class. You're also free to ask me about it in office hours or after class. So, yeah, so that finishes off what we were going to talk about on Friday. So let's move on to today. So today we're going to look at how do we get input from the user, for loops, arrays, things that you might be familiar with from other programming languages, and we'll also we will introduce Lab 1. So when we want to get input from the user, we are going to use what's called the scanner. And I am just going to make a new package in my CSCI 132 project, and I'm going to call it day 3. And in day 3, I'm going to make a new class. And again, so the point of this is just going to be to demonstrate things like scanner, arrays, for loops. So I am going to create this with a main method. So I checked that box. And I'm going to call it, well, I call it array demo, even though we're demoing a lot more things than arrays, but if we want to match the file that's on the website, we'll say array demo, and I'm going to create that. And so the first thing that I'm going to need to do if I want to be getting input from the user is import my scanner. So to do that, I'm first going to need this import statement. If I try to use, like if I actually don't have this, and I try to start using scanner, we'll go into this in a second, but if I didn't have this import statement, Eclipse is going to try to help me out and tell me to import it, I believe. I'm kind of surprised that it didn't, but anyway, we do need this import statement, and if we want more information, we can look at the documentation. I have a link here, but another way you could get to the documentation is from the main website for the class. But we can see things like an example, and also constructors and methods that our scanner object will have. So unlike Python, yeah, we have a couple steps before we can actually start getting input from the user. So we're creating, in this line, let's say, here, I'll give myself a comment. So create a scanner object called input to get input from the keyboard. And so to do that, I need to specify, I'm going to create a variable input. I'm going to call it, it's going to be of type scanner. And then I'm going to call the constructor. And I'm passing in system.in. And that's because I want to get input from, probably standard in, from the keyboard. And one thing you might notice that's different from Python is you need this new keyword to call the constructor. And let's see if let's just run this and make sure that we don't have any errors when I was like doing that. So now let's say ask the user for their first name. So if we want to do that, let's say I want to print something that asks for a name. What would that look like? I just want to print out, give me your name.
System.out.println.
Perfect. And something like type your first name. And then to actually read it in, okay, so let's say I want to save the name in a variable called name. So can anyone tell me what, at least the start of that. Yeah.
String.
Yeah, exactly. So the name's going to be a string, and I need to specify the data type. And then the variable is going to be name. And then I'm going to assign that variable to whatever my input. So I've got my input object, and I'm going to call, I want to call call a method on it that will get me the next string that is given by the user, and that method is just next. So that's just going to take whatever is typed by the user and save it into this variable name. And so,
wait, so how does next work?
So it's a method of the input object.
Okay,
and
so we're getting input is equal to whatever the person types in, right? With the scanner.
Let's see an example, and let's just see how it works, and I think it'll help, but it is definitely confusing if you haven't seen this before. So, and so just to check that we succeed, let's print out you typed, and then whatever is assigned to the variable name. So, okay, so let's say I type my first name. It's Lucy. You type Lucy. So I think one way to demonstrate what's going on is if I type not just my first name, but actually my first and last name. So what the next method is doing is it's just getting the first thing here, and then it's stopping as soon as it sees the white space. So it's actually not going to, it's going to ignore, at this point, we're going to ignore everything after the white space. And so when I run this again, and, oh, whoops. If I press enter, you know, it tells me you type Lucy. I might say, well, no, I typed Lucy Williams, but actually, I only told it to read this first, whatever happened before the white space. If I wanted both, does anybody have a guess about, let's say I wanted actually both the first and last name. What's one thing I could do? Yeah. Yeah, so one thing I could do is just an entirely different method. So one way I could do that is Eclipse is helping me out with possible methods that I'm interested in. So next line, so I'm going to say type your full name now. And that could work. So Scanner has lots of different methods that we could use. And yep, that one works. And so I can always go back to my documentation and look at these methods. Like I used next. Maybe this is not. So there's some examples. Here we are in methods. Okay. Yeah, so we did next, but here we had next line. You could use, you can always look at these to see if there's another method that you want. Does anybody have any ideas if I wanted to do, let's say I just wanted to use next. Any ideas on how I could still achieve this? Yeah, here, go for it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I could say something like first name and last name is the next thing. And so I think playing with things like this can really help solidify your understanding. I guess we need a space in there. Huh. Oh, whoops. So I'm going to try that. So it was waiting for me because it expected two things to be able to parse out. But so both of these would work. And yeah, I think it's just important to understand that input, when we call the next method, it's only going to take up to white space. And then it's going to ignore everything after that, unless you call the next method again, and then it's going to find that next thing. Great. Any questions so far on using scanner to get some input from the user? Cool. Yeah.
There's that bar on the left, like int bar or whatever you want to call it, and it's the input is never closed. What's that all about?
Yeah, that is a great question. So let's see, close the scanner. Well, Eclipse is telling us that we should close this. Basically, in terms of kind of lower level stuff, it can manage the memory better if we actually close this input. And so if you want to get rid of, so your programs are going to be fine that's why it's called resource leak, because it's saying you may be leaking memory. If you want to get this warning to go away, you can say input.close. So again, this is calling the close method, and we will get more reminders of object-oriented programming if calling methods is confusing to you. We will focus more on object-oriented programming on Wednesday, but we can call the close method on our input object, on our scanner object called input, and then we will get rid of that warning. So yeah, I'll try it again, and there we go. So yeah, thanks for that question. All right. So now let's look at for loops in Java. So in Python, if we wanted to do something, if we want to just iterate over some numbers from 0 to 9, say, we could do something like for n in range 10, print, n. So in Python, we're just saying, implicitly saying start at 0, we're telling it to end at 10, and we're going to print every number between 0 and 9 inclusive. In Java, we can do the same thing, we just have slightly different syntax. So specifically, if we wanted to do this, what we would say is for, still got that for keyword there, but we would say we have to specify a start, and we have to give it a type. So our variable that we're going to iterate over, here we were saying n, I'm just going to say I. I'm going to start it at 0, so here I have to specify where I start. I have to specify where I stop, and since I want to match this, I need to stop before I get to 10. And then I also specify how I increment. And this plus plus is saying increment by 1 each time. And we can double check ourselves. I don't know why it tried to do that for me. And I'm also going to comment out getting my, we're going to use our scanner later, so I'm going to put it at the end, just reorganizing my program here a little bit. But great, let's check ourselves, make sure that my for loop actually worked, and it did. So if I want to, say, start at a different value, I can do that. I can change this. Maybe I want to just do 8 and 9, start at 8. How about, what would happen if, let's say I want to have a more descriptive variable. I want to call this year. what would I have to change in this program to make it work? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Everywhere that I've got an I need to change it to year. And that is totally fine. A lot of times we use I, at least I think of it as an index. If I'm using it as an index, I'll say I, but I like to use a descriptive variable. I can also do something like, say I want to go from 10 to 0 and incrementing by 2. Anybody think they know how to do this? Yeah.
You do your first 10, so it'd be I equals 10.
Yeah.
And semicolon I is less than 0, and then you, or I minus minus, or minus 2.
Yeah, I think we would do I minus equals 2. And let's print this. Yeah, so if I do less than 0, then I want this to be something that's like, I assert that this is true, and when it's false, I should stop. So I think greater than 0 is going to be what I want. So maybe I'll also comment this out. Also, anybody know the keyboard shortcut to add these comments like I'm doing? Yeah.
Control/.
Yeah, exactly. Control/. So if you don't know that, that is a very helpful one. It's pretty constant, or pretty, yeah, most IDEs have that same functionality, yeah.
Can we use a for each loop on the lab?
Yeah, that's fine. And we'll actually talk about a for each loop today, if we get there. Great. So, okay, I can't remember who mentioned it, but on Friday, there's really smart question, when we just introduce variables, like what if you have a lot of data that you want to store? You're not going to make it a variable for all of them, right? So what we have in Java to solve that problem is arrays. And we have 2 ways to make arrays. The first one I'll talk about is with curly brackets containing the data in the array. So just like everything in Java, we need to specify the data type. So let's say I want to make an array of doubles. So the syntax there is I have my data type, and then I'm going to use these square brackets to indicate that it's a one-dimensional array. Now I need my variable name. I'm going to call this highs. I'm thinking of this as holding like high temperatures. And then here I'm just going to, when I say curly brackets, this is what I mean. I'm just going to make a list of some high temperatures off the top of my head / my notes. And these all would have to be doubles. I don't have an example, or we don't have to do an example, but if I threw a string in here, it would not work. And you can try that for yourself. But if I do this, I now have an array that has these 3 elements. And another way that I can create an array is, again, I have to specify the data type. So let's say I also want some low temperatures. I can use the new keyword, or the new operator, I think in this case, and declare that I want this to be length 3. So here, lows has 3 slots. So here I happen to make 3 slots and fill them already. At this point, lows doesn't have anything in it, but I can put some data in there, like say I want to put something in the first position. I can do it like that using the same, just like Python, I use the square brackets to access a position of my array, just like you did with lists in Python. And so here I have also filled my array lows with some doubles. One thing to note is that Java will let you declare an array before assigning to it. But one thing that a mistake that you could make is that if I just declare it, so here I'm going to declare an array called average. It's an array of doubles. I've just declared it, so just like here, but I haven't actually initialized it like I did in this part of this line. And so I might be tempted to say, well, okay, what's the average of my first day? You know, the average temperature on this first day was, I want to put it in the first slot, so that's the 0. And I want to do something like highs at 0 plus lows at 0 divided by 2, you know. Because I'm thinking I'm going to try to take the average. But if I try to run this, well, it's not letting me do it. So if I wanted to do something like this, the issue is that I haven't actually initialized this array. So what I would have to do is say, I think I would say average is new double of size 3. And then I think I should be good. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. So, okay, let's say I didn't have this line. This still isn't going to work. It's true. I had another error, but this still isn't going to work. But if I actually initialize this array, then that would work. Yeah.
So when you initialize an array, you always have to specify how many slots are in that array?
Yes. Yeah. And Java actually has a nicer thing called an array list that we can change its size. So with an array, we can't change its size. But, you know, we'll start with the basic thing and get to the more complicated thing later. All right. So, okay, we had an array of doubles. An example of an array of strings. Let's say I want an array to hold my grocery list. So my groceries are going to be strings. What would this look like if I wanted to start building an array of my groceries? Yeah.
Would you use string brackets and groceries?
Yeah, and whatever I wanted to call it, maybe I call it groceries. And if I just know, I'm just gonna have 2 items in my grocery list. This is actually what I need to get to the grocery store. So that's another. Let's put a third in here. So now I have an array of strings. I think Eclipse is just telling me that I haven't used it. That's fine. Let's just check. We already saw that we can access these, but let's say I wanted to access, print out whatever I have in the third position, so index 2, so we start at 0. I can do that. And indeed, it's Oreos. Okay, so let's say I want to iterate, I want to use a for loop to print out everything in this array. Anybody want to tell me how we would do that? Yeah, sure.
We should just do the loop int I equals 0, when I is less than groceries.length.
Yeah, so a good thing to do here would be to actually use the length field of the groceries array. Yeah, looks like that's working. And we're just going to iterate by 1. Another thing, in this case, if we just wanted to be really simple, we could have also said, we just want to go 0, 1, 2, so I would put a 3 here. But groceries.length is also a good way to do it. And then let's say I want to print those out. I'll write our print line. What would I put in here? Maybe someone else. Yeah.
Groceries index to I.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so someone else already mentioned for each loop. Would that person or anybody else like to tell me how I would use a for each loop in this case? Anyone we haven't heard from? But no, here, you person with your hand up.
It's going to be the type that's in groceries, so it would be for string, and then you can like little response. So maybe like G for groceries.
Sure.
And then it's a colon.
Yeah.
And then it's the array for the list.
Yeah.
So this is groceries.
Yeah, and so now we have basically we've kind of quickly been able to, get these elements of groceries. They're just going to be assigned to this variable g, and so if I just print g, I'm just going to get each one of those. Oh, I forgot to check, but it looks right to me, and both of those worked exactly the same. And so, yeah, you can use, sometimes it's easier to use a for each loop, sometimes it's easier to use, sometimes you have to use just a regular for loop like that. What was that? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep, so let's say we wanted to do it over our array of doubles, which was highs. Oops, excuse me, double. So it would have to say this variable g is going to be of type double, and we want to use the highs array, and then if we run this, then it's going to just take, g is going to take those values from our highs array. Okay, great. So we will do a little activity with this on Wednesday, but I wanted to spend the last couple minutes of class looking at the lab. So I'm going to just open up the lab here. So logistics of this lab, it's due on Thursday, anywhere on Earth. And like I mentioned earlier today, you can either submit this on D2L. There should be a submission folder already open for that. I guess I won't check. Someone can let me know if that's not working, but I think some people have already submitted to it, so I would think that that means that you can all see it and you could submit to it. So you can turn that in that way, and then your TA will run it, and they will give you points based on the rubric, or you can, if you go to your lab time, you can just show it on your laptop or the computer's there. You probably will also have to show your code, and they can just grade you right there. So to do this lab, what you're going to do is you're going to start with this file right here. You can either just copy this. So here I've just selected all, I've copied, and now I'm going to go over to Eclipse. And let's say I make a new package. And since I already have a lab1 package, I'm going to call this lab1 class. And I'm going to make a new class in here. I guess I'm going to call it lab1. And I'm just going to open that. And I could just paste this in. But I would just have to make sure that I change the package. Oh yeah, I changed the package. So here I said lab1 class. And so I can do that. I could also save this as a file like directly onto my computer into that folder that we actually saw at the beginning of this class. Or, I didn't try this, but I wonder if you can also, save this as a file. But regardless, just pasting it in works totally fine. Oh, I guess I did write this up a little bit. So basically, this lab is just going to guide you through, or this file is going to give you a little tutorial on what we covered today, really. So just follow the instructions in the file. As you're reading through it, try making small changes. Like we do in class, we make a little change. We see what happens when we run it. And then once you're comfortable with how the program works, create a new Java class. And then write a program that does the following things. It's going to create an array of length 5 with strings in it. And these can be anything you want, like top 5 favorite albums, top 5 Super Bowls of all time. You're going to print it out, and then you're going to ask the user to replace the number 1 item, and then print the new list out. So you don't have to match this formatting. You're welcome to, but if you prefer a different formatting, that's totally fine. But you can see here there were top 5 movies. The user is prompted to enter something. So here the user actually types this. And then we print the new one, and the top 5, the first thing is changed. You can see that there's specific grading. Oh, and the grading turnaround, I can update this. But as long as you turn this in on time, you will get it back before Tuesday of the next week. So you will have a grade. And you can submit it as many times as you want. We will grade the last one. Thank you for your attention today. If you have any questions, feel free to come up. Have a good rest of your day.
Keyboard controller. If you type SYSO, so SYSO, and then do, I guess on yours is probably control space.
This like,
enter, they auto stuff.
oh, like, wait.
SYSO, and then command space probably. Or give the control space.
Nice. Thank you. Hey.
Just real quickly.
Here, wait. Let me stop the recording.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Where do you go for the recordings, by the way? It's on